Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hi, and welcome to the New World Order Showcase podcast. Today we have with us Anne Aleckson. Anne is a Visionary Channel mystic, author, and speaker. Anne embodies the universal wisdom teachings of all that is, which she has practiced extensively on a personal level and shared with her friends and clients for over 15 years, creating transformation at the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual levels through her own unique transformational conversation methodology, which includes the 1-minute miracle emotional healing technique, the ABC brain retrain process, and her very own philosophy of aspectology. Welcome to the show, Anne. Really excited to hear all about these.
Jill, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here, and thank you to you and to your people who are watching and getting to know me a little bit more. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I'm really excited to learn more about all the things that you're doing. It sounds really unique, honestly.
Well, it is, I guess, because we're all unique in our own ways. So even if we're doing something that other people recognize the name of, like, let's use Reiki as an example, because that's quite a common one. Even if you're a Reiki practitioner, you bring your own energy and your own frequency and your own past and your own experiences to it. So you can never not be unique. And yet also, yes, it is very unique in that I channel a non-physical stream of consciousness that we call all that is. And while it's common knowledge, it has its own way of speaking the words and using the vibrational frequency of the words to create transformation in a client's or a group of people's energy field.
I know some people name their collective consciousness that they channel. I personally have a name for mine, but do you name yours or do you just call it all that is?
I absolutely love this question, and I'll tell you why. Because when I first started doing this, when this first happened to me, for me, 15 or so years ago, I had been in corporate. I had no idea about spirituality. I'd never been someone who was knowingly psychic or, was seeing energy beings or anything like that. So when this first started for me, it started with me meditating in my search for happiness. And in my meditation, within a couple of weeks of starting to meditate, I started to hear a voice inside me, but also outside of me. And it always said, we are all that is, all that was, and all that ever will be. And so to me, it has always been all that is. And then I started walking into the spiritual arena, the people who were spiritual, who knew better than I because I was such a newbie. And they all said to me, yeah, but what's their name? And I'm like, well, it's all that is. Every time it comes through, it says we are all that is, all that was, and all that ever will be. So it's all that is. But they did manage to convince me to give it a name. Because, I unfortunately, back in those days, and even to some degree now, I have a lot of self-doubt. I always assume everyone knows something more than me, and particularly coming into it as a new person. So I took their advice, and in fact, I had a channel who was holding space for me when I was learning how to utilize this gift. And she told me it was a particular name, so I started using that name. But it is that name, but it's also everything else. That's why I stick with all that is, because it is everything else. When I'm working with clients, I have, I mean, I can't even tell you, hundreds and hundreds of different energetic beings that are known come through, because they're everything that we know is part of all that is. And so once I really kind of got confident in my own self, I went back to talking about it as all that is. So, because even still now, whenever they're coming through, the first thing they say is, we're all that is, all that was, all that ever will be. And then they say, and so are you, meaning all of us. So yes, long answer for a short question. I do.
That's really interesting.
Call it all that is.
And I love your story about, listening to other people tell you what you should do. And then realizing, I don't really have to listen to them. I can just call them whatever I want.
You know what's interesting though, Jill? It's taken me a very, 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 very long time. It took me a long time to come to this place in myself, to be in a place today where I don't follow anyone's teachings. I don't follow anyone's telling me what to do with my business, with any part of my life, anything at all. Sure, I see what's going on out there in the world, because you have to know what's happening and how people are doing business and things like that. But I have stopped needing to do it the right way and really stepped into just doing it my own way. Now, when I look back 15 years ago, I knew that coming in, but I let my human self-doubt lead the journey rather than letting source lead the journey, which I now know to do, of course, and which is so common these days.
I think 15 years ago it was, and maybe it's just because I'm fairly new to expressing in a more general way what I've come to realize. But it seems like 15 years ago, this was more of a backroom discussion that you would have with people. It wasn't like you went to work and you told people about your visions or the things you were hearing or what was being said in meditation.
You're absolutely right. And, I don't know if you know this, but just so that I can tell you, I actually knew you back then. Knew of you on social media, right? You were doing Heart Life coaching or something like that. And so I knew of you because I was looking for people to help me, to coach me. And I did find a coach way back then. And because I thought, okay, I'm gonna be like a life coach. That was becoming a thing. I'm going to teach people how to be happy. And this was before it had really started to come through, but I was aware of it, and I was in that group with people who were holding space for me to be able to do this, because the way that I do it is that they use my voice to speak. So it's a for me, it was a harder thing to allow them to do that. So I needed people to hold space for me and make me feel safe. And so I found a coach, a really top level, one of the top coaches based in the US. And the very first thing she said to me is that you cannot channel for your clients, which knocked me down a peg or two, right? Because yes, it was before the phenomenon of Abraham Hicks became really well known. I'd known of them for quite a while, but they hadn't yet done the Secret movie and become more mainstream known. So one of my very first coaches to help me build my coaching business back then said to me, no, you can't do that for clients. And I had clients who were people that I knew who were, corporate level, work with me and then create programs that one of them is still now to this day after her session with me, she created in one day a program that she still runs today and has made her, millionaire at least. And she won't acknowledge that she ever worked with me, because she still has that thing that you don't tell people that you're working with some woo-woo weird thing. So I get it. And the journey, was perfect. I have no doubt about that whatever happened was supposed to happen. Otherwise it wouldn't have happened. So I hold no angst about that, or blame or anything like that, or even shame anymore. But just to simply say, yes, it was such a different world back then. And now every second person you meet is a channel. And so that's interesting as well, because now a channel can be done all sorts of ways. Back then, a channel was someone who did what I do, which is go into semi-trance and allow the energy to speak through me. So everyone now, you can call yourself a channel if you're just doing channel writings. You can call yourself a channel, because we are all channeling all the time with whatever tools we use. So my tool is the voice, the words, and the frequency of the words.
Mm-hmm. And everybody has the ability to do this. I think it's just, and I don't know that many people weren't doing this before, but it's becoming much more acceptable to talk about it. Like, I call mine Joan and the Unicorn Posse just because I can.
I love that. Sometimes in the early days when we were doing channeling events, when I was sitting in front of groups of people and channeling for them, we used to have this funny, silly little joke, and we would call it, they would call themselves, people would say, well, what's your name? And they'd say, oh, just call us Bob.
Yeah.
Which was quite funny, because nobody back then got the whole all that is thing. That's not a name. So they didn't, people wanted a name. So that's what they would say, just call us Bob, which is quite funny. I'd forgotten about that. So thank you for reminding me of that.
I love that.
For me, what I know to be true, and the teachings that came through me in my initial spiritual awakenings, is that we are, they say we are all that is, all that was, and all that ever will be, and so are you. You, humans, are the physical manifestation of all that is. What that says to me is that if I'm the physical manifestation of all that is, then I have access to all that is, the field of oneness, which is where all of these things that we name come from. So, and that's what I believe, that we're evolving into a new way of being, and that new way of being is a higher, what you might call a higher consciousness, again, labels, but what you might call a higher consciousness. And that level of higher consciousness is simply able to access the other aspects of us. This is the human aspect. Those are the non-physical aspects, non-human aspects, and we can live side by side. They're not higher, we're not lower, we're not higher, they're not lower. We're all just one, and accessible to each other through raising our vibrational frequency.
Everything is that way. I posted on Facebook a few days ago about wealth being a state of mind, because everything exists for us all the time. It's not about money. Money is just, you can always make money. It's just like, because it's just a thing. It doesn't represent anything. It's just a medium of transfer of something. It doesn't even have to be a physical something. And money isn't even physical anymore. It doesn't exist. And it does. I mean, when you start thinking about things in those terms, it's like everything exists and nothing exists together. And you have total access to it. Every one of us does, no matter who we are or where we are. It's just, now I think people are becoming aware that there's options. I don't have to live in this little container that imprisoned that I'm, when we're born and we're programmed and trained to believe certain paradigms, it's kind of like putting us in a little prison where we're not allowed to access all of the riches that are life and existence. We just exist on a different frequency.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. So the Earth is raising her frequency. The human beings on the planet and all other beings on the planet, every other being on the planet, whether that's a being that looks like an animal or looks like a plant or whatever, we're all collectively evolving. And that's the whole point of the universe, is to expand, to grow, to become more. And we're part of that. And I think human beings like to think that we're separate from that, but we're
And
not.
they keep making dumb decisions based on that thought pattern.
That we're separate. Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Disrupt the natural flow of things. And then consciousness has to adjust to that. I think, to me personally, the whole global experiment that was conducted on us was a massive failure. And it was a massive failure because it woke people up to the idea that, hey, there's a different paradigm out there and I can take part in that. I think that was just like, it was
Yes.
the best and worst thing that ever happened to humanity in our lifetimes.
It was certainly an awakening point. It was very clear to me because I'm sitting down here in Australia, and even though we're very similar, we're also a little bit different. We're more independent minded, and we're more. I believe, for me, I've always seen Australia being a bit more spiritually opened in this
way,
not the other ways. And in when that all happened, come March 2020, was it? I was watching because I have a lot of clients in the States. And of course, I follow a lot of coaches and things in America as well, because back in the day when I started, I couldn't find them here in Australia. So I went looking there. And so come March 2020, I watched a wave of awakening happen in your country. And of course, it happened in ours as well. It happened everywhere, but it was really noticeable in America. It was just incredible to watch and to listen, and to hear people start talking about things that I'd been shushed about for so long. You can't talk about that in these circles. You can't. And I've always been, and I don't know what it is about me, but I've always been very open about what I do. From the day it started happening to me, I was telling everybody and being treated like I was a mad woman, but I couldn't not tell people. It just was natural for me to talk about it. So interesting. So I went through a long 15-year journey, certainly the first 10 years of it, where I had to, because of who I was as a person, the way that I'd grown up, the way that you are as a female when you grow up, particularly in a very masculine country like Australia, very patriarchal. And I'm sure you guys have this as well, but very patriarchal here up until recently. And so I took about 10 years and just really learned what all that was teaching me, and learnt it to the point of becoming the embodiment of it. Because for me, that's the evolution, is to become the embodiment of these truths that we're all now talking about, and actually living them, not just talking about them and not just sharing them with others, but becoming the frequency of that knowledge. Because that's the quickest way to change the world, is to be the frequency of that and just take your frequency wherever you go.
Be the change you want to see.
Exactly. And I use that expression all the time. That's what I liked when I came across you. I thought, oh, okay, same expression. We're all talking about the same. And there's so many of us talking about, changing the world starts with you, which is one of the little things on my book, actually. It says, changing the world starts with you, at the top of my book. So
yeah. And so you do coach people. Do you do one-on-one coaching, or do you do group coaching? Is it a combination?
I've been, with the energy that we're in at the moment, there's just been so much. I've been going through another transformation. In fact, I've been going through this since my mother died the year before last, December, and then my son died a month later, so last year in January. And that was really about 6 months before that I started caring for my mum. And I kind of just slowed down in my business a lot. Prior to that, I was doing lots of group sessions, and I was also doing one-on-one sessions with clients. And part of this shift that's happening in me right now, particularly coming out now, is to change the way that I've been doing things, because it feels like it's time for change. And yet also I'm starting to realize I'm actually going back to when I first started. I'm being drawn back to a lot of the teachings that I was teaching back then. It feels like there's almost like a reboot happening, and I have to go back to what I was doing back then. Some of the teachings have started to come back to me, like things I'd completely forgotten that I used to do with people. Bringing back the fractured parts of the soul and these sorts of things that I did a lot of back then, but it's now wanting to come back in again. And it feels almost like a restart to me. And so I'm in the process of changing things up and putting everything into one program that I'm going to create a membership, an app-based membership. So yes, at the moment, what I do is I work one-on-one with clients on Zoom, and I do group sessions as well from time to time. Again, Jill, I truly do follow what I'm told to do.
Mm-hmm.
So every now and then I'll just bust out and send an email out to my people and say, hey, I've just got this idea to do this many sessions on Sunday. Who wants one? And so that's what I do now, I just let it all happen. And I love what you were talking about regarding wealth. I just think it's such an important conversation. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. When I need something, when I want something, when I have a desire for something, I allow myself to receive the way to get it, and then I take action on it. That's pure law of attraction, right? So
Yeah.
I love that about the wealth. The thing is that I find myself more and more always saying, I know how to make money, because we all know how to make money now. We all know what's possible. We've just got to get out of our own way, because it's just those parts of us that still think we're back there 15 years ago and unsure of ourselves that holds us back. And so really it is about just having the courage to follow your own guidance and to take action on it. It might seem like the weirdest, jankiest thing. Some of the things that I was doing back 15 years ago people would say, what? I don't understand what you're saying that you're doing. But that's common these days, right? I could never explain to people what I did, because literally I get in front of people, a person or people, and I get out of the way. I move my consciousness out of the way, and I let the consciousness that comes through come through. Sometimes it shows up in a particular historical spiritual figure. Sometimes it shows up as an alien being or a star family. I just get out of the way and let what the client needs to come through. But back then, people were, particularly coaches, were like, well, you can't tell people that. You just have to say, make it sound like it's something that, and
It's in a box.
I could never do that. And I used to, funnily enough, I don't know why I'm going into all of these memories are coming up in this conversation. So thank you for that. But I used to, pricing conversations with coaches, charge this much. And I'd be like, I used to say to them, well, what I do, there's no, I step into the energy field of my client and become one with them. How do you price that? Do you know? And there was always that conversation about, You can't say that to people. You can't say that what you're saying to them is coming from inside them, because then they won't pay you. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm not going to pretend that I'm doing something that's common and normal. You know, I had no problem with telling people that in sessions when people say to me, how do you know this? I'm like, well, because you know it. You just needed to hear it from me, from someone who looks different than you. And they'd be like, no, you cannot say that. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I can't not say it.
Yeah, but that makes you so unique these days. I mean, I know other people that are doing something like what you're doing. They do it on a group level, and they do it, through different programs that they have, but they're not doing it the way you're doing it, which is, it's really a one-on-one concierge type encounter with you. And
Yeah.
it's really special. And the idea that you have people that you've actually helped build huge businesses around a short conversation with you, excuse me, or even a longer conversation with you, speaks volumes about how efficacious what you're doing really is.
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't even know, right? Because I'm coming at it like a child. I'm just getting my consciousness out of the way. So it's not about me and although everything I say when I'm in those sessions, when I watch them back, because sometimes I don't remember what's said, that
Mhm.
it will always speak to me at some level as well. That's why that's why I love doing groups, because when you do a group, you talk to one person, but everyone in the room receives the answer that they're looking for.
Mhm.
So yes, and you know, this was always very hard. It's been a journey for me to try and be okay with telling people the way that I do things and asking them to pay me for it, and being told by coaches that I shouldn't be doing it the way that I'm doing it. And now, of course, I feel vindicated because I'm watching others doing it. And that very first coach that I worked with about 3 years after I fired her, she sent me a message to her mailing list, which I was on, saying, "Oh, I'm starting a new program and I'm going to be channeling for you." And I'm like, okay, I've got to stop taking other people's advice. So yeah.
When you hire a coach, you need to hire a coach that's like further ahead in that area than you are, and not somebody that's going to argue with you about everything. Whether it's channeling or anything else, you need to find the people that that resonate with you. And not every coach is for everybody.
Exactly. And I always found, because of the work that I do, it was very hard, always very hard, to find a coach who also really truly understood what I was doing. Even as the world was waking up, I still would come across coaches, and I wanted their help to build my business, but they would always have some problem with the way that I wanted to do it. You know, I was looking for a true coach, not someone who had their own set idea and just wanted to give you that, which is what so many of them are these days. But yes, so as a spiritual person working the way that I was, trying to work with coaches who were very much based in marketing and reality, and it was such a journey for me. I spent multiple thousands and thousands of dollars and often walked away disappointed. So not every time. I want to just say that, be very clear. I've had some amazing people that I've worked with, but in those early days, it was very hard for me to find someone that I could truly just be myself with, you know?
Oftentimes you have to just sift through the content to find the nuggets that you need to help you form your own thing, instead
Yeah.
of just trying to embrace their courses more than coaching often.
Yes,
And
yes.
people don't really understand the difference. A course is something that you consume and you assimilate the information to facilitate a change in yourself. But a coach helps you take that information and make it actionable. And people that are putting out courses and calling it coaching sometimes forget that.
I think you're
Or don't
right.
even know it to be.
I think the coaching industry, and again, I've watched that because it really was starting to become normal 15 or so years ago. And of course, Facebook opened up and all of that. So I've been watching that industry. In fact, I went and did a life coaching certificate and a law of attraction certificate, life coaching certificate, way back then. So I've kind of been watching the life coaching and business coaching field, and it's an interesting one. There's not a lot of cohesion around it, you know, from one to the other. It's a very interesting field.
Yeah, I got my life coaching certificate also, and it showed me a bunch of things, mostly about myself. But and I think most
Yep.
of us, like, our coaching is just an extension of who we are, and when we figure out what our mission is, it makes the whole process just like, oh, so I just should be doing this. Everything else kind of falls into place.
I love that, because the mission's a big thing with me, and I think it's so important because, you know, again, I'm talking a lot about becoming the frequency of the teachings that I teach, and the work that I do. And I really believe that's part of the evolution that humanity is going through, is to um, find your mission, become the frequency of that mission, and then take it out into the world. It doesn't matter how you take it out into the world, because it's got nothing to do with the how. It's got to do with how you're being and the frequency that you're being, and the people around you being lifted up by that frequency into whatever your mission is. So my mission is peace. So
That's
when
my word of
I'm
the year.
and when I help people, they become more peaceful. They feel the energy of peace, and they step into that a lot more. So I love that mission. Oh, so good. So good.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that I'm sure that people that seek you out for help with that come away with a kind of clarity that they're not going to get in other places. Somehow
Well, I certainly
taking
like
that
to
to
think so.
the consciousness and saying, you know, what do you think about this, and letting the consciousness point you in the right direction, filtered through who you are. You're gonna It's kind of like a shortcut.
Yeah, it is. You know what I find most fascinating? From time to time, I'll be talking to some, you know, they'll come to me and they'll say, I don't really know what my purpose is. And so we'll have the conversation, and it will become really clear to both of us what their purpose is. And it's always one of those higher emotional, emotions that are higher on the emotional scale, if you know Abraham Hicks' work, or in the David Hawkins work, the kinesiology stuff. And the funnest thing about that for me is often they will have that word in their name somewhere. You know, they'll be like this. I'll be talking to someone whose surname might be something like Love Child, and their frequency aligns with love. And so it always ends with a laugh. We think it's quite funny. Or they'll have changed their name to include the word joy or something somewhere, or whatever it is for them. So I find that incredibly fascinating when that happens.
As she says, is she looks at her last name. I'm
Exactly.
a firm believer in names. You grow into your name, the meaning of your name. And I look at the meanings of people's names often just to see where are you really? And people that change their names, I'm really fascinated by what motivated them to change their name or how they got this new name.
And so gosh, it was quite a while ago. It was a very long time ago. Must be 10 or so years ago. I came, I was delving into numerology and all these things. And of course, I was starting to go into the spiritual arena to see what this was all about. And so I came across so many spiritual people, and so many had changed their names, and I was encouraged to change my name. And I went through the process. I almost got to the point I sent my birth certificate off with all the paperwork and the money to get my name changed. And then I rang them 2 weeks later and said, can you just not do that? Can you send it back to me, please? So that's really interesting to me because, yes, I have my ideas of why people feel the need to change their name and all of those sorts of things. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. It's just my thoughts about it. But at this point, I'm very glad that I didn't do that. Numerology would tell you that there are numbers missing in your name, and that's why you have never been able to make money or find love or whatever it is. And that may well be true. But bottom line, the very first thing that all that is said to me when I was comfortable and we were starting to have these conversations, and the body of work that my book is about came through, was what you believe is true. And I've really tried to own that and live into that, because it is such a truth, right? People who believe that the eclipse is going to cause them to feel a certain way end up feeling that way. And it doesn't cause that for everybody. So therefore, that's because of what they believe is going to happen, just like everything else. And so I try to be very, very careful about what I'm firmly believe in. Even having this conversation, tomorrow we could have the same conversation and I'll tell you something different, right? Because I'm not set in any belief. I believe that even spirituality is a set of beliefs. And there's a lot of people in the spiritual arena. When I first started doing this, as I said, I would go and do psychic events and things like that, because literally in my spiritual awakening, all of my clairs opened up immediately. So I would go to psychic fairs and things and channel for people. And I would have people I didn't even know come up to me and say, oh, you've got to do this and you've got to do that. And one time I was on Facebook and I posted that I was going to do some channeling sessions and they would cost this much. I had two women send me private messages saying you can't do that. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to give it away for free. Oh, Lord, help me. So, they're just belief systems as well, based on who you are and the way you've come up in the world, and your family history and just so many variables, as you know. So I'm forever looking at my belief systems and cleaning them up. And I'm forever looking at my emotional wounding and cleaning that up as well, because that's how you raise your vibrational frequency the quickest way. I mean, yes, you can dance around the house every time something happens, but if you just clean up the reason that you need to dance around the house, you can raise your vibration more permanently.
I think a lot of that just starts with watching what you're thinking about, and stopping those negative thoughts that, everybody has. Everybody has them. But if you're not really diligent about thinking about what you're thinking about, if you start ruminating on the wrong things, you're going to end up, we're always manifesting everything all the time. And you start thinking about things that you don't want to have happen, or bad things in your life, they will show up. It's just the way the universe works. So if you can be really careful about what you're thinking about and how you're thinking about things and how you're feeling when you're thinking about things, you'll start getting clues from your body saying, better watch out. And
exactly.
The more that I've been able to grab hold of that philosophy and that awareness, the more my life has improved. I mean, like every aspect of my life is so much better since I've been really concentrating on the quality of my thoughts. And meditation is a great, great place to start with that,
Yeah,
just to be
absolutely.
aware.
Yep. Yeah. And you mentioned emotions as well. And I love that because for me, every belief is attached to an unfelt feeling, an emotion that you're holding inside you and you've been holding on to probably for your whole life. That's why no one wants to look at it, because they know that once they open that up, I mean, it's like Pandora's box, right? It's just huge. I mean, I was terrified of breaking down and crying because I thought I'd never be able to lift myself up off the floor again, because I had so much grief and sadness and from every moment in my life where I felt a certain way. So yeah, so that's a particular thing that happens for women, I've noticed over the years, most
Oh, yeah.
afraid to feel that emotion. But that's where my philosophy of aspectology comes in. So we're the physical manifestation of all that is. So we're the physical, they're the non-physical, and then we have the 5 layers of our energy body. So we've got the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. So 4, I should say. And so every belief is tied to an emotion that you've not felt or you've refused to feel. And so I call them the trauma twins. And of course, when I'm speaking of trauma, I want to be very clear. I'm talking about trauma being subjective. So it can be a big thing or a small thing, and it's different for everybody. Some people can have the same experience, and one person will have nothing, no
No
past,
reaction.
no reaction and response and these sorts of things. And the other person, it becomes the thing that holds them down for their entire lives. So that's what I mean by trauma being subjective. So I call them the trauma twins because every time something happens to you that you don't like, you create a belief about yourself, or you make meaning out of it, because we're meaning-making creations, right?
Mhm.
So we create a meaning about it, and it's always about ourselves because we're focused on ourselves at the time because we're holding in the emotion that it's making us feel. So those trauma twins create this tight magnet inside you, and that's the thing that's magnetizing the life that you're living. So if you're having the same boyfriend over and over again, who treats you the same way, even though it's a different person every time, then there's some of these things inside you, these shadows, some people call them. And I actually like that because the more of them you remove, the more the true light of yourself, of your true being comes out. So yeah, so that's where the aspectology comes in, the different aspects. So there's the emotional aspects and the belief aspects or the mindset aspects. So always together for me, it's always the two together. And I became someone who chased triggers, right? As part of me becoming the frequency of the work that I teach. Chase the triggers. When you get triggered, don't react to it. Just go back to yourself. Why? What did it make me feel? And then deal with the feeling, and then deal with and what did I make it mean about me? Deal with that and get rid of them together. I find it the
I
best way
think
to do it. That's how I do my work.
yeah. What did it mean to me? And the ability to make up different stories about situations in your life, priceless.
No, but it's
It can
also
mean anything you want it to mean.
exactly. And so we can go back to our past and change the story, change the meaning that we made these things mean about us. It
Mhm.
really can be as easy and as powerful as that. And to then be able to let the past sit wherever the hell it sits and
Mhm.
focus on now and the future, which is where we all need to be. We need to turn away from the past at this point. That's become very clear to me over the past couple of weeks, is that it's time to turn away from the past, not just as a collective humanity, but personally and the whole world. We have to stop focusing on things that happened in our past and bringing them into the now moment, where we then project them into the future. It's the only way we're going to change the world. at
The
the
only
level
time that exists is now. Now
Yep.
is the only thing you have. And what you believe about the moment that you're living in, it's always a choice. You can choose to be happy, you can choose to be wealthy, you can choose to have joy, you can choose all of these emotions. It's you can make the decision, and it cuts off all other options. Then the option to be sad goes away. And it doesn't matter what happens to you, the longer and you practice standing in that emotion of happiness and joy and peace and and confidence, and I am who I am. And
Yep.
yes, there's going to be people that bounce off of you. There's going to be people that try to attack you.
But you've
Just
got to just be okay with that, right? We've got to start
yeah.
realizing that, in fact, that's got nothing to do with me. If someone has a problem with me, the only thing that I care about is how does it make me feel? And what do I make it mean about myself?
Yep.
Got nothing to do with them. They're just a gift to me to show me these things. So
They're going to struggle with their own things. And eventually, my goal in the world is that everybody realizes this and we can all stop pinging off each other and just appreciate the uniqueness of each individual that comes into our path. And
yes, yes, I love that. So let me tell you about the experience that I had where I saw the world in peace. Because we're going there.
please
There's no
do.
doubt in my mind, no doubt in my mind. I just very quickly, I was sitting to meditate, and all that is said to me, we're going to take you into the future, and they did, and I have some idea of when that is. Although the time frame, the timeline is collapsing, so it will come sooner than back. That was about 7 years ago. So the time frame has collapsed since then. So even though I knew what the time was then, it's not that anymore. But I saw the world in peace. I saw the world in peace, and I was shown my mission statement. And it was all, of course, it's all around the teachings that I teach, which is my mission statement is world peace through inner peace, one person at a time. And it starts with me. And that came from that moment where they took me into the future. I saw the world in peace. I came back. As I landed back into my body, I felt like I had been stamped with this statement, the statement that I just said, world peace through inner peace, one person at a time. And it starts with me. And then that got broken down for me. So world peace is my soul's mission, or in fact, our soul's mission.
Mm-hmm.
Through inner peace, one person at a time. That's my mission as Anne on the planet for the years that I'm on this planet in this body. And then it starts with me. That's my personal mission. I had to become it first. I had to become the embodiment of these teachings so that I could share them with others. And that's really the only part that I've got to play in this. I know that there's a part of me that's going to come back in another form and continue this journey, because that's what it's all about. And I know that it's inevitable. I know we're going to have peace. I know we're getting closer to it, even though it looks like we might even be getting further away from it. But I know what the end is. I know that we get there. I have no doubt at all. And I hope to encourage everyone to have some level of peace around that, I guess, that all the stuff that's going on in the world out there, it's just part of the game to get where we're going, which is to world peace. And it might not happen in our lifetimes. And that's okay as well, because we don't end. We are just the physical manifestation of energy. Energy doesn't stop. It just changes shape or shifts itself or morphs into something else. And yeah, it's just, it gives me such peace knowing that. So that's why I tell people all the time, we're going to get there.
Does this world peace existence mean a world without boundaries? Did
There
you
is no
see a world?
there is no need, because here's the thing, when we all recognize and realize that we are one, that there is really only one of us sitting here, even though it looks like there's two of us.
Mhm.
We are only one. And everything that I'm saying to you is a gift to you, and everything that you're saying to me is a gift to me, to help our souls and ourselves evolve. Yeah, so in the world in peace, we all recognize that we're one. We all know that everything that I do impacts everything else. There's an inner and there's an outer, and it's all one and the same. We treat them as being separate at this point. But in that world, we all know the truth, that we are one, and we're all, you know, every time I think about it and talk about it, I see that image of those beautiful birds in the sky who all, you know, do all that flying where they're, and it's just a magnificent thing to see. And also fish, schools of fish, all swimming in the same direction. Human beings have forgotten, or they've been taken away from the knowing that we are also part of nature. And that's our natural way. We're like a school of fish, or those families of birds, I don't know what you call, flock of birds. We are exactly the same as that, and we can all become aligned. And that's when we'll see what it is that we're all wanting at this point, to have peace, to have harmony, to have compassion for other human beings, to have every human being having their basic needs met, so they can get on with being their natural self, like a blade of grass. You know, we're just like that. We're just like all of these things that are in nature. We are a piece of nature. It's our consciousness and our brain and our thinking that, and our ego, that believes that we're separate from that everything else is nature, but not I. When the truth is, I am.
Yes, the truth is I am. And
Yep.
we are all I am.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, Anne, how do people get in touch with you to work with you? This has just been like such a fascinating conversation.
Well, thank you. And it has been a great conversation. I love what you've asked, and it's just been beautiful. So I do have a website. It's annealeckson.com, and on that website there is a speaking of purpose and mission, there is a purpose frequency quiz that people can do, and then they'll be on my list. So that's how I keep in touch with my clients and people who are interested in what I do. But I've been on Facebook since it became something in the world. And it's my comfort zone. It's my happy place. And I love to connect with people on Facebook, either on my profile or on my page. And I also have a group that I'll invite you into if you are interested in that. It's called Frequency First, because that's what it's all about, putting our frequency first and being our frequency first in the world. So any of those places, but certainly love to connect with people for sure.
That's awesome. I'm going to join your group too.
Thank you.
No, thank you. So what's the one thing you hope the audience takes away from this conversation today?
Well, you know, we were just talking about peace, and if I may, I've got two very quick things. First of all, I want to take away the confidence that I have, the surety that I have that we are heading towards peace, that it's okay. You can breathe, you can relax, you can keep living. There's nothing going wrong here. And then the second thing, and it's something that All That Is teaches through me, which I, of course, now teach without All That Is, although, again, we never separate. We're never separate. It's always me and All That Is. One of the things that I find really beautiful that they've said from time to time is this. And I want everyone to really, really, really just breathe this in and feel it and know it. You were born perfect and you haven't changed yet.
We'll leave it with that. Thank you for joining me, Anne.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.
I'm like, how that was so good.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the You World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the You World Order, or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.